My journey to become a polar specialist, specializing in the polar regions, began when I was 4 years old, when my family moved from southern Canada to northern Baffin Island, up by Greenland. There we lived with the Inuit in a tiny Inuit community of 200 Inuit people. We were one of 3 non-Inuit families. And in this community, we didn't have television, we didn't have computers, obviously, radio, we didn't even have a telephone. All of my time was spent outside with the Inuit playing. The snow and the ice were my sandbox, and the Inuit were my teachers. And that's where I became truly obsessed with this polar realm, and I knew someday that I was going to do something that had to do with trying to share news about it and protect it. I'd like to share with you for just 2 minutes only some images, a cross-section of my work to the beautiful music by Brandi Carlile, Have You Ever? I don't know why National Geographic has done this. They've never done this before, but they're allowing me to show you a few images from a coverage that I've just completed that is not published yet. National Geographic doesn't do this, so I'm very excited to be able to share this with you. And what these images are, you'll see them at the start of the slideshow. There's only about 4 images, but it's of a little bear that lives in the Great Bear Rainforest. It's pure white, but it's not a polar bear. It's a spirit bear or a Kermode bear. There are only 200 of these bears left. They're more rare than the panda bear. And I sat there in the river for 2 months without seeing one. I thought, you know, my career's over. I proposed this stupid story to National Geographic. What in the heck was I thinking? So I had 2 months to sit there and figure out different ways of what I was going to do in my next life after I was a photographer, because they were going to fire me. Because National Geographic's a magazine. They remind us all the time. They publish pictures, not excuses. And after 2 months of sitting there, one day thinking that it was all over, this incredible big white male came down right beside me, 3 feet away from me. And he went down and grabbed a fish and went off in the forest and ate it. And then I spent the entire day living my childhood dream of walking around with this bear through the forest. He went through this old-growth forest and sat up beside this 400-year-old culturally modified tree and went to sleep. And I actually got to sleep from within 3 feet of him and just in the forest and photograph him. So I'm very excited to be able to show you those images and a cross-section of my work that I've done in the polar regions. Please enjoy.
Have you ever wandered lonely through the woods, and everything that feels just as it should? You're part of a life there, you're part of something good. If you've ever wandered lonely through the woods, if you've ever wandered lonely through the woods, have you ever stared into a starry sky? Lying on your back, you're asking why. What's the purpose? I wonder, who am I? If you've ever stared into a starry sky. Have you ever stared into a starry sky? Have you ever been out walking in the snow? Tried to get back where you were before. You always end up not knowing where to go. Have you ever been out walking in the snow?
Thank you very much. The show's not over. My clock is ticking. Okay, let's stop. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We're inundated with news all the time that the sea ice is disappearing and, it's at its lowest level. And in fact, scientists were originally saying sea ice is going to disappear in the next 100 years, and they said 50 years. Now they're saying the sea ice in the Arctic, the summertime extent, is going to be gone in the next 4 to 10 years. And what does that mean? After a while of reading this in the news, it just becomes news. You sort of glaze over with it. And what I'm trying to do with my work is put faces to this. And I want people to understand and get the concept that if we lose ice, we stand to lose an entire ecosystem. Projections are that we could lose polar bears. They could become extinct in the next 50 to 100 years. And there's no better, sexier, more beautiful, charismatic megafauna species than for me to hang my campaign on. Polar bears are amazing hunters. This is a bear I sat with for a while on the shores. There was no ice around, but this glacier calved into the water, and a seal got on it, and this bear swam out to that seal, 800-pound bearded seal, grabbed it, swam back, and ate it. And he was so full, he was so happy and so fat eating the seal that as I approached him about 20 feet away to get this picture, his only defense was to keep eating more seal. And as he ate, he was so full, he had probably about 200 pounds of meat in his belly. And as he ate, inside one side of his mouth, he was regurgitating out the other side of his mouth. So as long as these bears have any bit of ice, they will survive, but it's the ice that's disappearing. We're finding more and more dead bears in the Arctic. When I worked on polar bears as a biologist 20 years ago, we never found dead bears. And in the last 4 or 5 years, we're finding dead bears popping up all over the place. We're seeing them in the Beaufort Sea, floating in the open ocean where the ice has melted out. I found a couple in Norway last year. We're seeing them on the ice. These bears are already showing signs of the stress of disappearing ice. Here's a mother and her 2-year-old cub. We're traveling on a ship 100 miles offshore in the middle of nowhere, and they're riding on this big piece of glacier ice, which is great for them. They're safe at this point. They're not going to die of hypothermia. They're going to get to land. But unfortunately, 95% of the glaciers in the Arctic are also receding right now, to the point that the ice is ending up on land and not injecting any ice back into the ecosystem. These ring seals, these are the fatsicles of the Arctic. These little fat dumplings, or 150-pound bundles of blubber, are the mainstay of the polar bear. And they're not like the harbor seals that you have here. These ring seals also live out their entire life cycle associated and connected to sea ice. They give birth inside the ice, and they feed on the Arctic cod that live under the ice. And here's a picture of sick ice. This is a piece of multi-year ice that's 12 years old, and what scientists didn't predict is that as this ice melts, it's getting these big pockets of black water are forming, and they're grabbing the sun's energy and accelerating the melting process. And here we are diving in the Beaufort Sea. The visibility is 600 feet. We're on our safety lines. The ice is moving all over the place. I wish I could spend half an hour telling you about how we almost died on this dive, but what's important in this picture is that you have a piece of multi-year ice, that big chunk of ice up in the corner. In that one single piece of ice, you have 300 species of microorganisms. And in the spring, when the sun returns to the ice, it forms the phytoplankton, grows under that ice, and then you get bigger sheets of seaweed, and then you get the zooplankton feeding on all that life. So really what the ice does is it acts like a garden. It acts like the soil in a garden. It's an inverted garden. Losing that ice is like losing the soil in a garden. Here's me in my office. I hope you appreciate yours. This is after an hour under the ice. I can't feel my lips. My face is frozen. I can't feel my hands. I can't feel my feet. And I've come up, and all I want to do is get out of the water. After an hour in these conditions, it's so extreme that when I go down almost every dive, I vomit into my regulator because my body can't deal with the stress of the cold on my head. And so I'm just so happy that the dive is over. I get to hand my camera to my assistant, and I'm looking up at him, and I'm going, whoo, woo, woo, which means take my camera, and he thinks I'm saying take my picture. So we had this little communication breakdown. But it's worth it. I can show you pictures of beluga whales, bowhead whales, and narwhals, and polar bears, and leopard seals today. But this picture right here means more to me than any other I've ever made. I dropped down in this ice hole, just for that hole that you just saw, and I looked up into the underside of the ice, and I was dizzy. I thought I had vertigo. I got very nervous. No rope, no safety line. The whole world is moving around me. And I thought, I'm in trouble. But what happened is that the entire underside was full of these billions of amphipods and copepods moving around and feeding on the underside of the ice, giving birth and living out their entire life cycle. This is the foundation of the whole food chain in the Arctic right here. And when you have low productivity in ice, the productivity in copepods go down. This is a bowhead whale. Supposedly, science is stating that it could be the oldest living animal on Earth right now. This very whale right here could be over 250 years old. This whale could have been born around the start of the Industrial Revolution. It could have survived 150 years of whaling, and now its biggest threat is the disappearance of ice in the north because of the lives that we're leading in the south. Narwhals, these majestic narwhals with their 8-foot-long ivory tusks, don't have to be here. They could be out in the open water, but they're forcing themselves to come up in these tiny little ice holes where they can breathe, catch a breath, because right under that ice are all the swarms of cod, and the cod are there because they're feeding on all the copepods and amphipods. All right, my favorite part. When I'm on my deathbed, I'm going to remember one story more than any other. Even though that spirit bear moment was powerful, I don't think I'll ever have another experience like I did with these leopard seals. Leopard seals, since the time of Shackleton, have had a bad reputation. They've got their, that wily smile on their mouth. They've got those black, sinister eyes and those spots on their body. They look positively prehistoric and a bit scary. And tragically, in 2004, a scientist was taken down and drowned, and she was being consumed by a leopard seal. And people are like, we knew they were vicious. We knew they were, and so people love to form their opinions. And that's when I got a story idea. I want to go to Antarctica, get in the water with as many leopard seals as I possibly can, and give them a fair shake. Find out if they really are these vicious animals or if they're misunderstood. So this is that story. Oh, and they also happen to eat happy feet. And as a species, as humans, we like to say, oh, penguins are really cute, therefore, leopard seals eat them, and so leopard seals are ugly and bad. It doesn't work that way. The penguin doesn't know it's cute, and the leopard seal doesn't know it's kind of big and monstrous. This is just the food chain unfolding. They're also big. They're not these little harbor seals. They are 12 feet long, 1,000 pounds, and they're also curiously aggressive. You get 12 tourists packed into a Zodiac, floating in these icy waters, and a leopard seal comes up and bites the pontoon. The boat starts to sink. They race back up to the ship and get to go home and tell the stories of how they got attacked. All the leopard seal's doing is, it's just biting a balloon. It sees this big balloon in the ocean. It doesn't have hands. It's going to take a little bite. The boat pops, and off they go. So after 5 days of crossing the Drake Passage, isn't that beautiful? After 5 days of crossing the Drake Passage, we have finally arrived at Antarctica. I'm with my Swedish assistant and guide. His name is Goran Elma from Sweden, Goran. And he has a lot of experience with leopard seals. I've never seen one. So we come around the cove in our little Zodiac boat, and there's this monstrous leopard seal. And even in his voice, he goes, that's a bloody big seal, yeah. And this seal is taking this penguin by the head, and it's flipping it back and forth. And what it's trying to do is turn that penguin inside out so it can eat the meat off the bones. And then it goes off and gets another one. And so this leopard seal grabbed another penguin, came under the boat, the Zodiac, started hitting the hull of the boat. And we're trying to not fall in the water, and we sit down, and that's when Goran said to me, this is a good seal, yeah. It's time for you to get in the water. And I looked at Goran, and I said to him, forget that. But I think I probably used a different word starting with the letter F. But he was right. He scolded me out and said, this is why we're here, and you proposed this stupid story to National Geographic, and now you got to deliver, and you can't publish excuses. So I had such dry mouth, probably not as bad as now, but I had such dry mouth, and my legs were just trembling. I couldn't feel my legs. I put my flippers on. I could barely part my lips. I put my snorkel on my mouth, and I rolled over the side of the Zodiac into the water. And this is the first thing she did. She came racing up to me and engulfed my whole camera, and her teeth are up here and down here. But Goran, before I had gotten in the water, had given me amazing advice. He said, if you get scared, you close your eyes, yeah, and she'll go away. So that's all I had to work with at that point. But I just started to shoot these pictures. So she did this threat display for a few minutes, and then the most amazing thing happened. She totally relaxed. She went off, she got a penguin, she stopped about 10 feet away from me, and she sat there with this penguin. The penguin's flapping, and she lets it go. The penguin swims towards me, takes off, she grabs another one. She does this over and over. And it dawned on me that she's trying to feed me a penguin. Why else would she release me? Release these penguins at me. And she, after she did this 4 or 5 times, she swam by me with this dejected look on her face. You don't want to be too anthropomorphic, but I swore that she looked at me like, this useless predator is going to starve in my ocean. So So realizing I couldn't catch swimming penguins, she'd get these other penguins and bring them slowly towards me, bobbing like this, and she'd let them go. This didn't work. I was laughing so hard and so emotional that my mask was flooding because I was crying underwater, just because it was so amazing. And so that didn't work. So then she'd get another penguin and try this ballet-like sexy display sliding down this iceberg like this, and she would sort of bring him over to me and offer it to me. This went on for 4 days. This just didn't happen a couple of times. And then so she realized I couldn't catch live ones, so she brought me dead penguins. Now I've got 4 or 5 penguins floating around my head, and I'm just sitting there shooting away. And she would often stop and have this dejected look on her face and like, are you for real? Because she can't believe that I can't eat this penguin. Because in her world, you're either breeding or you're eating, and I'm not breeding, so. And then that wasn't enough. She started to flip penguins onto my head. She was trying to force feed me. She's pushing me around. She's trying to force feed my camera, which is every photographer's dream. And she would get frustrated. She'd blow bubbles in my face. She would, I think let me know that I was going to starve. But yet she didn't stop. She would not stop trying to feed me penguins. And on the last day with this female, where I thought I had pushed her too far, I got nervous because she came up to me. She rolled over on her back, and she did this deep guttural jackhammer sound, this guck, 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 guck. And I thought, she's about to bite. She's about to let me know she's too frustrated with me. What had happened was another seal had snuck in behind me, and she did that threat display. She chased that big seal away, went and got its penguin, and brought it to me. That wasn't the only seal I got in the water with. I got in the water with 30 other leopard seals, and I never once had a scary encounter. They're the most remarkable animals I've ever worked with, and same with polar bears. And just like the polar bears, these animals depend on an icy environment. And I get emotional, sorry. It's a story that lives deep in my heart, and I'm proud to share this with you, and I'm so passionate about it. Anybody want to come with me to Antarctica or the Arctic? I'll take you. Let's go. We got to get the story out now. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.